Hello everyone, my name's Rivka Campbell and welcome to Rivkush. Rivkush is a CJN podcast where you will hear JOCs talking about a range of Jewish topics. Today my guest is Noah Shufutinsky. Noah has recently graduated with his degree in Judaic Studies, and he is also known by the name of Westside Gravy. I happen to love Westside Gravy's work. Some of his preeminent songs are Diaspora, Angry Black Man, that both had me hooked from the get-go. One of the things about Noah is, as an artist, he combines not only his passion for music, but he also combines his lived experience as a Jew of color in the United States and various other cities. So today, I would like to welcome Noah to the podcast. You need to tell me the background behind Westside Gravy.
That's the $1 million question.
I need to know it.
Everyone is asking.
I need to know it. Can you share?
I'll share part of it. The West Side is because I grew up mostly in San Diego, California. I moved around a bunch because my dad was in the U.S. Navy for most of my childhood. And we always ended up back in San Diego. So that's what the West Side's for. And I think that West Coast influence played a lot. It played a lot into my music and the music that I create, and really shaped my sound. So that's sort of a reference to that. But the gravy, that's still top secret. I can't let it out yet.
Come on, you know. and I'm probably not cool enough to even figure it out.
Honestly, a lot of people have had a lot of guesses, but I have to sort of adopt the Israeli foreign policy, neither confirm nor deny, just to make sure it's quiet regardless.
That works for me. Since you put it that way, I'm just going to continue to speculate, but I'm not going to interrogate. Okay. So tell me a little bit about, growing up Black and Jewish in San Diego and all around the US of A.
So for me, the first thing that pops into my mind when I think of how was it growing up Black and Jewish is that it was great. And I think that the reason for that is because I grew up, the interactions that I really value are the interactions I had with my family. And they were always people who, shaped an environment that I was able to fully embrace who I am as a person unapologetically and connect to my roots. So that was my first experience with knowing what it means to be Black and Jewish. And I think the other part of that is they really did a good job of preparing me for the fact that I would have to face a lot of bigotry growing up. So from a young age, that explained to me, you're going to have to deal with anti-Semitism. You're going to have to deal with racism. You're going to have to deal with double standards, and you're going to have to work, double the amount, twice as hard as some of your peers because of your identity. But that's not an excuse for you to still not achieve greatness, because everyone in my family and all my ancestors did the same thing, and they got me to where I am today. So at the same time that they got me ready for the negative and more heavy aspects of it, they also made sure that there was always something to celebrate about it. And I think a lot of that came from music too. It came from listening to Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and being taught, you better sing along to those lyrics, and me getting excited to sing along to those lyrics when my mom would play that music. So for me, I think that there's a really good balance between being, conscious of things I'd have to deal with in the world, and also just being happy about who I am.
That is awesome. And I think what you said, it just resonates so beautifully, because I think often when we talk about Black and Jewish, there's this tinge of, oh my God, it must have been so hard. It's I remember back in the day, that's what they used to say about biracial children. It's oh, you don't want to bring biracial children into the world because it'll be very difficult for them. And it was always that kind of negative spin on it, as opposed to uplifting the positivity. Sure, recognizing that there are people out there who won't be cool with it, but that doesn't mean it's not cool. Yeah. And it sounds like your family really, like you said, they really balanced it and really showed you that it's more a case of there is strength in who you are, and it sounds like they taught you the tools to deal with those detractors, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to that point about it, the emphasis always oh, it's going to be so hard. I mean, I've definitely had difficulties even from a really young age. I've dealt with anti-Semitism. My first experience with that. I was in like kindergarten or first grade, and I got like uninvited to a birthday party because it was around the time where we were studying holidays in like school, and someone mentioned Christmas, and I was like one of the eager kindergartners, like everyone else in my class, who raises their hand, but we celebrate Christmas this way. We celebrate
Yeah.
Christmas this way. And I mentioned that I don't celebrate Christmas because we don't believe in Jesus in my culture because I'm Jewish. And after that, a student was like, all right, well, you don't believe in baby Jesus, so you're not invited to my birthday party. But at that
Wow.
point, my parents had prepared me for it. So my response was, well, if you're a bigot then, and I don't want to go to your birthday party.
Okay, so that's some tough kindergarten kid too. I bet that the kids are probably like, what does that even mean? But he sounds angry.
Yeah, I mean,
Good
later
for
the kid
you.
was like, oh, like, never mind. Like, maybe you can come to my birthday party. And I don't think I ended up going. But
Yeah,
for me, it was more of an indication of like, what is this other kid learning in his house? Because he's not even old enough to understand like what that means necessarily.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
like, so, I mean, I've had those difficulties. I've had the experience when I was not much older than that, like in a gift shop on family vacation, getting like followed around a store and someone thought I was just going to steal stuff. And that's something that has continued to happen to me throughout my life, especially when I was younger, shopping in like toy stores and stuff, especially if I was with my mom. That happened
Mhm.
on many occasions. So like I don't want to say that like, oh, like I don't want to make it sound like I didn't have any difficulties or there aren't any specific unique hardships to being Black and Jewish in the context of the US. And also at the same time, like when I wake up in the morning, I'm not like, oh, time to face difficulties as a Black Jew. Like,
Can you imagine if we did that? If there was
it would
even
be horrible.
like some special Jewish prayer that we wake up and we say because we're facing the world as Black Jews, like wow, that would be interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, I hear what you're saying. And I guess and I recognize all of it. And because I can obviously relate to it. I'm a wee bit gobsmacked about what you said about the kindergarten incident, but bigotry knows no age either,
Mhm.
and like you said, it's what you learn in your home reflects, what you say out in the world and how you think, which is sad. Um, yeah, and even even when you're talking about walking through the store, I've had that happen to me once in the United States, and I didn't even know what was going on. Because don't get me wrong, we got our stuff up here. We have our stuff up here. I personally, actually that's not true. 3 times in my life I recognized that I was followed. Doesn't mean it didn't happen more times. These are just the 3 times that I noticed. One was when I was a little girl and I went into the super high-end store. I wasn't that little. Okay, I was a teenager. And I went into this high-end store and they were following me and following me. You know what my reaction was? I picked up an item and I went to the cashier to pay for it. So I ended up with a really expensive pair of socks, but it was almost my way of saying, yeah, I can buy something here. So why are
Yeah.
you following me? Don't assume, right? Yeah, it was a very
Mhm.
expensive pair of socks. I probably should have kept them to this day. One was in the United States and I didn't twig to what was going on. It was about 4 years ago. And then I turned around and I realized I feel like they're gathering around me. So I
Yeah.
literally turned around and said, can I help you?
As a customer, asking that to the person who
I
works
was
there.
like, can I help you? And they just like, Choo. Okay. And the third time was back in Canada and I was with a friend of mine. I didn't notice. She noticed. She said,
Mm.
they're following you. Security's following you. I'm like, what? She said, they obviously don't think we're together. And she said, so I've been watching them follow you. So I turned around and I did the stare, like, yeah, what? And he disappeared. But so I get it. But again, I see the world through this Black woman. You
Mhm.
see it in a different way. You're walking through this world as a Black man. So that leads me to asking you, it's going to sound weird, but how's it been? With all that has gone on in the past year. And for me, it's hard to believe that it's a year ago. It feels like ages ago, but it also feels like yesterday. But, all the stuff that's been going on in the United States, how are you negotiating it? Because it's become almost global, all eyes on the US. How are you
Mhm.
negotiating this walking through that world?
Honestly, it's really troubling to see what's happening. Like it has been my entire life. I think it also is now, and I think it's almost amplified because of the way people are almost like forced to constantly be on like a defensive because of social media. So I think that that adds like another layer to it, and it puts more like a different type of personal responsibility on the people who you're interacting with, and also on yourself to choose who am I going to actually like interact with, how much energy am I going to spend on this conversation. And I think also one of the bad aspects of it is that I've found myself a couple of times like this shouldn't even be a debate. Like I shouldn't even be debating whether or not a police officer's first response to a woman or man, a black woman or man, not complying, which is the rhetoric people use,
Yeah.
or a lot of times even complying.
Yeah.
The first response shouldn't be pulling out a firearm and killing them.
Mm-hmm.
And that shouldn't even be a debate. Like people have different debates on what should be the legal responses and all the systems like within, you know, the legal institutions. But like the fact that that's so normalized is troubling. And that's the thing that makes me feel anxious and like scared about the future. And one of the times I really realized it was actually last summer after I got to Israel in the late summer. I was sitting with a couple of friends of mine who I know from university in the US, but they're Israeli. So they're back home for the summer and they're watching it all happen. And they're saying like, you know, we have our racism here, we have our issues, but like seeing everything recorded on video, seeing exactly what happens when people are shot or are, you know, pressed against the ground to the point where they can't breathe for minutes and minutes and minutes on end is just like, it's crazy to them how often it happens. It's not something that should be normalized. It's not something that should seem normal. And there are multiple protests for multiple victims going on all at the same time. And that really made me realize like that's not a normal situation in a lot of other parts of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, what you said, I don't think it is so powerful what you've just said. And it's that fact that it feels like it's normalized, if I'm interpreting it correctly, like almost a sense of, like you said, you shouldn't have to debate something. You know, you shouldn't have to debate about whether it is appropriate or not to respond with a firearm. But you're right, there's some sort of complacency, normalcy, or something around all of this. And I know when I even heard about George Floyd, my first reaction was, here we go again. Mm-hmm. Because I think part of me as a Black person has come to expect this. And sadly, it's become the norm. And it never should be.
Right.
It never should be. And it's very disturbing and it is very scary. It is very scary. And you're right. The United States is unique in that. Racism isn't unique to the United States. How it is manifested is sadly unique to the United States. Yeah. And it's scary. It's scary. Tell me, how did you reflect this in your work? In your work as a musician, as an artist, how did you reflect these things that you were feeling?
So I think that one of the pieces that I think was the most blatant or like apparent reflection was my song "Angry Black Man." Throughout my whole like music career, the way I frame it is I rap about things that are important to me. And that's like a wide range of topics. It could be about growing up in Southern California and my favorite taco shops, because that influenced me. It could be about, you know, my family's history and my own personal story moving around. It could be about my Black and Jewish identity, the parts that I celebrate, the parts that are difficult to talk about when it comes to bigotry. And honestly, in that moment, I just felt a lot of anger. And it was like an accumulation of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery and of Breonna Taylor and of George Floyd. And for me, like, I'm just trying to think back, like I wrote the song it took me a little while to actually get to the point where I recorded it, because I wrote the song and it was out of purely being like angry and upset. And then I thought to myself, I don't know if like I should release this on its own without like the context of being like part of a bigger project, because I don't know how exactly it would be received, because there's also that part of me that I think Black women have to deal with, always being viewed as like angry if they raise their voices. And I think also Black men have to deal with in different ways, but I can only speak to my own personal experience, that anytime I'm passionate about something or outraged about something. There have been times in my life where I've been kind of dismissed or portrayed as being aggressive, when really I'm upset about a situation the same way as I should be. But I struggled with it a little bit because I'm trying to figure out, all right, like I have this song that's very raw and it's important to me. And at the same time, I want to make sure that people still understand it. And eventually, like I decided, I'm just going to release it because this is something that I should be outraged about. This is something that everyone should be outraged about. And if I want to express that outrage for myself, like I released the song. I didn't like do a bunch of promotion because it was really just me trying to share that piece with the world and put that, you know, expression of my own like emotions out there. And I was like, you know what? It's justified for me to be this angry. It's justified. It doesn't need to be polished or put into any other context. And also that normalization of Black emotion, that normalization of Black people being able to actually express ourselves was important for me to take on. And people appreciated that. Again, like I was nervous the whole time. Like, I don't know if this is, you know, proper like for me to do.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing it because I also thought like, okay, how many songs do you listen to on the radio where you hear Black people who are expressing their emotions, whatever happens in their lives, in their neighborhoods, and they talk about it, and they talk about violence against fellow Black people, things that are going on in their neighborhoods, and people will be making TikTok dances to it and just taking the music for what it is, someone's raw emotional expression. But for some reason, because I was speaking about something that in my mind was substantive when it comes to racism, I had this little bit of myself like second guessing myself. Not that I necessarily make songs about like violence and stuff, but that was something that was on my mind. And I was like, you know what? That's not right that I should be second guessing it and worried about it when I have my peers who are listening to this rapper and that rapper and that rapper and just bumping it in the car. And it's promoting violence that in some cases is really just like senseless. And I'm actually talking about a real issue.
Still pissed about George Zimmerman. Got me thinking about what my Second Amendment is. You can call it justice instead of vengeance. This ain't considered murder, this is just a death sentence. I'ma stand my ground, you wanna know what self-defense is. I won't lose no sleep, the situation's got me restless. This ain't no citizen's arrest, I ain't aiming for no chest. Bearing arms leave you headless.
Okay, so really and truly, when I actually first heard it, I struggled with similar feelings that you had. When I saw what you had titled it, I was like, ooh. And because I recognize that we aren't allowed to hold certain emotions as people of color. But then, as people will hear, it is important to hear that raw emotion and to understand where it's coming from. And so when I listened to it for the first time, I was like, I feel you, I hear you, I am you. And so it was necessary. So I'm glad that the outcome of your struggle with it was that you did it and it's out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, really important.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people related to as well. And something that I ended up tackling a little bit in the song. Like there's a little like skit session almost, like a skit section towards the end of one of the verses where you kind of hear that, like people, oh, why is he so angry? Because that's what people always ask.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you think?
Why are you so
like,
angry?
Look around.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you sound angry. Why are you so angry? And you really want to say, bleep and bleep, bleep?
Yeah.
Am I walking the same earth? I know I'm walking the earth with different feet, but tell me, you don't see this?
Mm-hmm.
You don't see this. Yeah. But like I said, and like you said, there are some emotions that we aren't able to hold and to express. Mm-hmm. Those tropes, angry Black woman, angry Black man. And it's like, wow, really? Because I find it in my day-to-day work. I have to do, code switching. I have to police the words I say and the tone that I use, which is denying us from being our authentic selves, right?
Yeah.
Right. But I have to say, speaking of your music, what hooked me in the first place was definitely Diaspora. To this day, I'll sometimes, do that. I can't say it out loud because I might trigger it, but I speak to Gogle And I asked her to play it for me. And I'm telling you, and I'm like walking around, all I'm missing is like, a giant Israeli flag, but
Yeah.
I have a little one, but it was so powerful. And again, it was you. It was you. So tell me about the genesis of that.
So thank you. First of all, like I remember we've been talking ever since then. After you heard that song, you reached out to me. So it goes way back.
I gotta find them.
Yeah. And for me, that was really cool because I didn't know what was going to happen with that song, and seeing the reception. And you were like one of the first people who reached out and called me. I was like, oh wow, like there are people who this really resonates with them. It's not that niche, like a lot of different people are appreciating it. So for me, that kind of was a pivotal moment. I would say one of many pivotal moments. So when I first started working on that song, I had no idea what it was going to be. I was working on another EP called Ethnic, and that was in the summer of 2018. So I was in San Diego at the time, and I was working on this EP called Ethnic about being Black and Jewish and dealing with that. It was a really personal 6-song EP, and I was trying to incorporate a lot of different sounds that have influenced me, that reflected the emotions and all that, because I do my own production. So that was all like what I was mainly focused on. And one day I was like playing around with some of the sounds, and I ended up playing Hava Nagila and sort of making a beat out of it. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was cool because I know there's like really some cool significance with that song, because it's one of the first, if not the first, officially like recorded Hebrew songs, Israeli songs on a record. So I was like, oh, there's like it's significant. Obviously, like it's a song that everyone knows. Yes. But there's also some like historical, cultural significance to it,
which I didn't know. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Like for me, that's what I love about the music, is figuring out how to put, some little like hidden significance. It gives it more meaning to me and gives it inspiration for me. So I made a beat out of it at first, and it was cool. And I was like, you know what? it was like a faster kind of beat. I wonder if I could even find like the original beat that I made. But I was like, I want to slow it down a little bit, and put it at like that West Coast tempo that I like grew up with. Yeah. And once it got there, I was like, okay, this is it. And then what I tried to do is I wanted to add in different sounds of the Diaspora. I wanted it to sound like something that's a unique take on this song that was, made and often associated with like Ashkenazi Jews, but is also like an Israeli song. Like it originated here in that form. So I wanted to incorporate, sounds of the Diaspora from throughout. So I put in like an oud, I put in all kinds of other instruments. Obviously, like there's some West Coast sounds because that's my Diaspora experience. And once I did that, I knew that I had something on my hands, but I was like, I'm not sure exactly what this is. I still need to finish up this other EP. So I'm going to set it aside. So I took the beat and I set it aside for a few months while I was working on my EP. And then I would say it was probably fall semester, the following, like a couple months later after the summer, when I was at GW, and it came to me like the hook, I'm a proud part of the Diaspora, in my heart I hold Jerusalem and Africa. And like, those are the words that came to me because it's like, it's authentic.
Yep. I say like those words a lot. I say those. Yeah.
I'm glad, because I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. A lot of people can relate to at least one of those parts, and then together, like they can see the other side of it. That's something that's authentically me and authentically a lot of different people. So once I came up with those lyrics, I was like, okay, I want to make this song about resilience. I want to make it about being unapologetic about who I am. Part of that, honestly, was probably influenced by some of the campus anti-Semitism I dealt with, but more so from the support that I had from my Jewish community on campus at GW, from like the organizations I was involved in at GW Hillel, at GW for Israel, that, yeah, we had to spend time fighting like anti-Semites and going and doing these like town halls and all that. And at the same time, we just enjoyed being around each other and hosting events that celebrated our identity. So I wanted to do something that reflected that spirit of like resilience and having to put up with all this stuff, but recognizing like that's not going to stop us. So I think that really influenced my lyrics. And from there, I wrote the song, tweaked it a little bit. And I was actually supposed to record it in December, like early December, the first week of December, because I was performing at a GW Hillel event. But my microphone and like interface and all that broke. I had like an extra one I brought with me to college, and it broke. I had no idea what was going on. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm just going to have to make sure I have like the lyrics down and ready to go to the instrumental. Because usually I make like a show mix with like the ad libs and stuff that are still there.
Right.
I was like, I guess we're just going to do it straight up. And I performed it not knowing what people would think, and people loved it. It was a group of like a decent amount of like students. It was kind of a smaller venue for like a Hanukkah party, event. And people loved it. And then I ended up filming the video about 3 weeks later when I was on a trip with Hasbara Fellowships in Israel, and then releasing it 2 days after I got back. I edited the video and released it. And I was like, it's going to be another cool thing to put out into the world. And then people shared it. And that's really, how it got where it was.
Yeah. So we're going to play a clip of one of my favorite songs, Diaspora.
I'm a proud part of the diaspora. We ain't gonna play the victim. They get mad every time we're standing up. I'm proud of my people, what we accomplished. You're crazy if you think some rocket barrages will stop us. Look through our history and we've been through it all. Made it through slavery and a Holocaust and still standing tall. At the Kotel Western Wall, saying the Shema, meditating on all the populations to whom this song is dedicated. 6 Jewish families that resided in Khartoum. My Iraqi brothers and sisters survived the Farhud. The ones who came in 56 from Israel, now we're thriving. Garim Berushalayim. וגם בחיפה, הגולן ותל אביב, באר שבע, בהנגב ואלה by the sea. אתה יודע שלא שכחתי האתיופים שעשו את הכל, מה אתם אומרים שהם לא יכולים? I'm a proud part of the diaspora. In my heart I hold Jerusalem and Africa. Kicked aside of our land and started gassing us till we put our foot down cause we had enough. Check out the
I'm telling you that as you are speaking to me, I am hearing it in my head. Like I'm totally hearing it. And a little part of me is also seeing the video, but definitely hearing it, and all the powerful words the powerful words. So you mentioned GW, George Washington University. So you were very involved in Hillel there. What were your challenges? Because we hear quite often about anti-Semitism on campus. We struggle with it in Canada. At all of our prominent universities are struggling with that, making some resolutions against Israel and all that stuff. And actually, I'm going to give a slight plug to your mother, Brandy. I believe she is doing some research on that soon, because I saw something about it. So it's still a topic that's very much in the forefront. How was it for you? What can you share about your experiences dealing with that?
So I think that for me, I knew like from the jump when I went to GW, I wanted to be involved in like a Jewish community. I didn't know exactly what that would even look like on a college campus, but I knew like, okay, this is part of my identity. This is part of my heritage. And this is like a chance for me to independently like foster that. So I got involved in Hillel like right off the bat. I went to like an early move-in program. And then shortly after that, got involved with GW for Israel because there were other people who were like in the early move-in program who were like, hey, like you should come out to some of our events. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say I was shocked by like any anti-Semitism I faced because I'd heard about it. I dealt with a little bit like of a precursor in, school before that.
Kindergarten.
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 Yeah. Goes way back.
Dang. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So like, I was like, okay, it's just going to be another environment where I'm going to have to deal with that. But I was grateful that I had a community right off the bat to support me. I think that weird way it manifested itself was like a lot of kind of obnoxious questions right off the bat. Like I would mention, before classes even started, I went to like some orientation type of event. People were like, oh, like, did you already move in? Which hall are you in? When did you move in? And I mentioned, I moved in early with like the Hillel program. And like they asked what's Hillel. I mentioned it's for Jewish students. They're like, oh, you're Jewish? Cool. Yeah. What do you think about Israel and Palestine?
Oh, wow. Couldn't even wait a beat, eh? It couldn't even wait a beat. It's like, dang.
Like, gonna ask this to every single, like, I know there's a lot of international students because I'm friends with them all. You're gonna ask this to every person about what's going on?
They are. That's the sad part. They probably will.
They might. I think Israel gets more media attention.
I'm being facetious, but yeah, like really and truly, it's kind of crazy how that was the next thing out of their mouths. But go on.
Like for me, that was kind of my first, like, okay, like, am I gonna have to say this every time that I mention that I'm Jewish? And I don't even have to mention I'm Jewish because I'm running around with the Star of David. So for me, it was kind of like, wow, this is like the normal thing on campus is to feel like you have to in some way justify your identity if you want to be part of certain spaces. So for me, that was strange off the bat. It was also weird. We had a lot of, so there's one professor who had some controversy at GW. I don't want to focus on her. So like there's some controversy about her and taking on like certain identities that she doesn't actually identify as. And one of the first weeks of classes, she said something about like how we have to always be careful about specific travel trips that people go on because they always have like an agenda. And she's like, and for example, Birthright is a Zionist trip. And I'm not really saying anything about that, but it is like, it's a Zionist trip and that's how they identify. And I was kind of new to this whole, like, you getting used to people saying Zionism is like a bad word. So I'm like, yeah, Birthright is a Zionist trip. Cool. Like, I can't wait to go.
What's your point? That's why I'm going.
Yeah. So I was like, like, I don't know if there's necessarily, like, what she said is correct. And I think that's a good thing.
But she put a negative on it, right?
But it still had like that tinge. Yeah. Like she didn't explicitly say that in the moment, but you could feel that dog whistle. And
trust your gut.
So I was like,
trust your gut. Because I can't see any other reason for saying that. There is no need to say. Right. It's like, why didn't she just say? It's the before and after of that statement, right? Like, be careful of intentions in this, right? So she's already setting up a negativity, right? And then when you throw that word Zionist in there, she's tainted that word.
And it's like the context of the before and after, like the people who she wanted to hear it a certain way are going to hear it a certain way. Right.
Yeah, they've managed to make Zionist a bad word. And I think, it's interesting how words have changed over the years, though. When I even think of the terminology that they use for Israel and how important language is. When I get deeply perturbed, offended when people, for example, use Israel in the context of apartheid. And I'm like, first of all, know what the word means before you use it. Know what the actual word means, and know that when you use it in this context, you're, in my opinion, and I had to say this at a large meeting about Israel/Palestinian issues. And I said, I personally, as a person of color, take offense to this, because when I hear the word apartheid, I think of South Africa, and I think of apartheid as a legalized system of racism and discrimination. And I said, the key word being legal. It was a government policy. And I said, I think how I couldn't go with my family back in the late 70s, early 80s to South Africa, because the people we were visiting were white. And so we would never be able to travel together. And I said, that is apartheid. And when you paint Israel with that brush, or for that matter, any other country with that brush, I said, you are actually diminishing what happened in South Africa. And that's never cool. And we do that with a lot of words. We're made, like, we talked about Zionism being a dirty word. And we do that. I also don't like the use of the word settlements in Israel. I'm sorry, that's where people live. It's residents. How is it a settlement? And why is it okay to call, places in the Shomron settlements, but you should be calling all of Canada a settlement if you're going to be accurate, because we're sitting on Indigenous land, 100%. There is no doubt. Yeah. It is pure fact. There's a lot of speculation with Israel. It ain't anybody showing me the actual facts, but I can tell you the fact of Canada, the fact of the United States, is we are sitting on land that we took from the First Nations, from Indigenous people. So who are the settlers? I think we are in Canada. Just saying.
And honestly, and honestly, that's another thing that kind of came up on campus is I was shocked to hear. This is like a two-part thing. One, there were a lot of people who weren't Black trying to pit me against myself, like trying to gatekeep my Blackness because of my Jewish identity. And I'll get into that. But there were times where a lot of the people who were involved in like this anti-Israel activism were white Americans. And there were times where people who lived in like the Midwest and their families were from England and Ireland and Germany and Sweden, like that's where their family origins were from, would be harassing my friends who are Jews, Mizrahi Jews.
Yeah.
Saying like, oh, like you're doing settler colonialism. And my friends would say, how about you? What are you doing to fix the settler colonialism that you're living on occupied land? Literally, like my roots come from over there. Like you're literally living on occupied land.
I'm living on my own land.
Oh, I'm sorry about it. Yeah. And And their response, oh, I'm sorry about it. I try to think about ways to fix it. And every day it's on my mind. Like, no, I don't want to hear about every day it's on your mind when you're calling for the destruction of my people.
Yeah. And it's not. It's like, whatever. Because you called them out.
Yeah. Like my friends would tell him this and they wouldn't have a response. Oh, we think about it every day. All right. So you can think about this every day while you're saying that we need to go back to wherever the hell we were kicked out of as Jewish people. Like, so for me, that was also a shocking thing. Like you're an educated person. You were able to get the same level of education, to an extent that I was to be able to get into this school and excel and take the same classes and have the same access to the same history books. And at that time was 2017. Like we all have the same internet to look up.
Yes, exactly.
We all have the same resources.
Google is your friend.
At our fingertips.
Google is your friend. Use it. Use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was frustrating for me. It was like, all right, you're purposefully being ignorant so you can be racist. Like you've had the access to look it up, to read about it, and now you've literally had a person call you out on it and educate you about their lived experience when their family was kicked out of. And at this point, it doesn't matter because it's a Jewish diaspora experience, whether it was Europe or countries in the Middle East or North Africa.
Exactly.
And like you've heard all of that and you're still going to continue with this nonsense. Like that was shocking. I wouldn't say shocking, but that was like frustrating for me to deal with.
100%.
And then the other part of it was, I had an experience where there was this one student who was trying to like misuse language about like apartheid and settler colonialism and all this stuff. And especially language that historically has been applied to Black communities and put that on Israel. And I remember, having a conversation with him, and within the conversation we had, it came up the fact that like anti-Blackness, anti-Black racism is a universal thing. And it's a thing throughout the world, including in a lot of these Arab countries that you're standing up for, criticizing Israel about, that literally engage in the Black slave trade. And the word that they call Black people is the Arabic equivalent of slave, as a racial slur. And his response to me talking about this was, but we don't talk about like oppression of Black people unless it's related to Israel because it's not convenient. Like he literally said straight up, Black lives only matter if they're convenient to us.
Wow.
And I called him on that. And he's like, well, I thought I was going to get somewhere with you, but I'm not. So I'm just going to leave this conversation. So I'm like, you're really claiming you're not Black. You're not part of my community. And then you're going to claim that you have the right to speak about Black issues to me, to my community, to speak for Black people. And then when Black people tell you something, you're going to walk away because you can't convince them to adopt your supremacist narrative.
Exactly.
So for me, I was like, wow, like
very definition of privilege right there. The very definition of privilege, the right to tell you what you should be saying and how you should be thinking.
Yeah, that was a weird thing because I'm like, okay, like you're really fine saying that out in the open. That's the part that was shocking to me. It was like, you're supposed to be so like educated on the lingo and the jargon and how to talk to people and use like the most recent buzzwords that you see on Instagram. But like you really are going to say something that blatantly racist and exploitative and still claim to be like speaking for progressive or liberal voice, which is what historically like Black communities and Jewish communities in the United States have been, including myself.
Yeah.
So it was like, you're really going to speak over me when you're not Jewish, you're not Black. And based on what he just said, you're not a liberal or progressive. So.
And dare I say, not really very literate or educated. Just saying.
That's the main point.
You can throw that in there. I can think of worse things to say, but I'm going to take that high road. Yeah, but you're right. That is something that we seem to be facing more and more and more. I think one of the things about the last operation is that I think the liberal, progressive, however you want to tag them, community have kind of been in a little bit of shock because some of the narratives that they held true were challenged during this, because I think they found it very hard to say, this is happening because Israel treats Palestinians a particular way and that it's not anti-Semitism, when on the other side of the world, there's this eruption of anti-Semitism at the same time. It's like, and I remember writing on social media, so tell me this is all about Israel again? As you're running in the streets and hiding in the streets of Toronto and the streets of New York, So tell me how this is, and I think it really challenged people who had this particular narrative, and it made them say, maybe it's not just about Israel/Palestine. Maybe it is actually people don't like us. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, hallelujah. Like, it's like it took you this. Sadly, it took you this to come out of that spot you were in. But while we're on Israel, let's flip it to some cool stuff before
Absolutely.
before we all both need to have a drink. So you are speaking to me from, I got to be, politically correct. Canada is my favorite place. Okay, Canada is just my birthplace, but you're speaking to me from my other home, Israel. So how is it going in Israel? Other than
It's
that,
amazing.
you're mask free.
Yeah. Well, now it's back for indoors. You have to wear a mask because some of the stuff rates started
variants.
coming up. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, thank God right now, like the hospitalization rates are not going up so much and morbidity rates. So I just hope it continues and people are able to, are staying safe and not, the severity stays like low. But yeah, for the most part, like outdoors, there's no more mask mandate. So many people are vaccinated and healthy and living life. So it's nice. That's refreshing to me.
I bet. But you are clearly very drawn to Israel. I'm under the impression you've been, like, a good chunk of your life, it feels like, has been spent in Israel, not just like, talking about Israel, living, but also being in the land. And you're back. And if I can say, you're back, hopefully for a long time. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct? So, how is it?
It's great to be back. And it's actually kind of funny you mentioned that. The first time I came to Israel was after my freshman year of college. So I've been on a couple trips then throughout college, and then now I'm here. So but it does feel like every single time I went to Israel, I'm like, all right, cool. This is a good time in Israel. I'll be able to go back to America and maybe come back in a year or so. And every single time, like that time between, when I'm in Israel and when I'm in the United States, I'm like, oh, I need to go back sooner and sooner and sooner. Like, is really being drawn to it. It's crazy to think about, but it's been great here. I'm living in Hadera, so it's in between Tel Aviv and Haifa, and I've had an amazing chance to practice my Hebrew. A lot of chances up here.
Yeah. Well, your Hebrew is pretty good, though. Your accent's good.
The resh, I can't say it. I always roll it.
Yeah, your accent's good. My equal other has heard it, and he's like, "Oh, it's not too bad." Anyways,
I'll take it.
Take it. Anyways, continue. So
I mean, it's been great. Right now, I'm here. I'm really focusing on music. So I've been working with a lot of artists here, especially from around the area. So from around the area of Hadera and Netanya, which has been super cool, and just getting a taste of what the music scene here is like. So I'm really looking forward to releasing some of the stuff I've been working on.
Wow. Are you gonna? I've always been under the impression Israelis love reggae. It's they do. So are you gonna venture into reggae? Or are you gonna be that guy?
You know what? I always like incorporating different sounds. So if I could find some artists here who really, do it in like the right way, I'd be down to.
That's the key. It's got to be the right way.
Yeah.
Don't do some weird reggae that's going to make people like me of Jamaican descent go, what is he doing? Somebody steer him away from reggae. You don't want.
Right.
Yeah, it's got to be done right. You got to get the authentic. Well, I think it's Ziggy Marley who he has ties to Israel, right? Mm-hmm. His wife is Israeli. So try and see if you can find Ziggy Marley, man.
Honestly, I'd love
if you want to do the reggae thing, try and hunt him down.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always I've grown up listening to a bunch of different types of music, and like rap is my main way of expression. But like if you listen to the songs and the beats that I make, I like to incorporate the sounds of the stuff that I grew up listening to, whether it's like soul music, whether it's Middle East like Mizrahi music, whether it's a lot of different sounds. So I mean, I've sampled Bob Marley a couple times just for like free songs and put out there. So for me, I'd always be open to incorporating.
There you go. And I have to mention, Westside Gravy, don't know what gravy means, is responsible, is the producer, the creator, the artist behind the theme song for Riv Kush. In fact, I think you called it Riv Kush song or something. And I was like, I giggled. But you will hear it, and it is glorious. And when I'll tell you something. You know how people say they love music. I truly love music. Like, I can't imagine a world without music. Yeah. When I'm in the car, I play music. When I'm in the car with people who don't have on music, I think there's actually something wrong with them. Yeah. You know, so it's like, how do you not listen to music? It's a 3-hour drive. It's a 10-minute drive. How do you not listen to music? So you can see in my background, which the audience can't see, but there's a bass guitar sitting up in the background. Like, I love music. Having said that, when I heard what you sent me, Riv Kush, I started listening to it, and, you know, my head starts. As soon as the lyrics started, I jumped up. Really? I jumped up. I was like, I jumped up out of my seat, and I'm like, yes, yes, yes.
I'm glad. That makes me happy.
That's why I couldn't convey it when I sent you, like, you know, my comments, because it's one of those things that I felt you have to say it. You know what I mean? I could have written, yeah, you know, I jumped, and I don't even know if I did, but I could have written, yeah, I jumped up out of my seat, but I jumped up out of my seat. And I was like, wow. That's it. That's it.
I'm glad you liked it. It's been long in the works. So I'm glad it came out right.
Yeah. So I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for that. So
thank you for the inspiration. Because, like, we talked about it beforehand. It's like, all right, I need to make sure I do this right.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And you got it. You got it, because, you know, you understand my perspective, and you understand, you know, my whole concept around how I want our voices to be heard, and in the way that I would like it to be heard, that we are more than just what we look like. Mm-hmm. We are more than just our ethnicity. We are more than just our racial background. We are the whole package, and we have our views on everything that are unique to us, you know, and we see it in the world where they do try and pigeonhole us, and they do try and say things like, even in terms of Israel, you know, you're Black, so therefore you must side with X, Y, and Z, or you must understand the concept around colonialism. And it's like, first of all, yeah, I'm Black. I'm also an educated Black woman. And that's what I'm going to base my opinions on. But don't make assumptions that this is my view because of the skin I walk in. And I think it's really important for people to hear us talk about a bunch of different topics. So I can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts, your words, your music, you with all of us. And, you know, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. And God willing, I will see you in Israel end of this year or next year.
Hashem.
Yes, because that's my goal, because I need to get back to the homeland.
Yeah.
We need it. We need it. Yeah, and we need it. We need it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Noah. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Riv Kush.
It's time we talk about more than just the tragedy, the hardships we've overcome and the savagery. It's time we focus on what's woven in the tapestry, the roots that connect us to our truth and the canopy of every single branch of our tradition. The story that's been told and those yet to be written, a tale of persistence, an account of achievement all across the globe, every single place that them leaves went. Scattered in the wind, never scattered too thin, to remember where we come from and the goal that's within. Zahav Yerushalayim, Asur Lishkoach, Hakdushat Haaretz Shenoten Lanu Koach. Scattered in the wind, never scattered too thin, to remember where we come from and the goal that's within. Zahav Yerushalayim, Asur Lishkoach, Hakdushat Haaretz Shenoten Lanu Koach.